Any advice for people transitioning from federal to private sector?
Well, you can start a company and have employees, or you can do consulting, right? But it's a little bit different, right? Initially, it's you and you're consulting for other firms and consulting for the government or whatnot, right? Or you can start your own company like I did. So my biggest advice would be do your homework. It's not always, all roses and it's happy and things like that. There's a lot of, issues that you're going to run against. Understand the rules of starting your own company, right? And I would say if you feel like you need a couple of years with the private sector, like a large, you should go do that.
Welcome to the Best 8 podcast. In this episode, we talk with Nicolas Schellman, CEO of Central Strategies and former Coast Guard Program Manager. Here's what he had to say.
So I love your story because if I understand correctly, you started in USCG. You were not in IT at all. Tell me a little about your role that was not IT. What was that role before IT, Nick?
All right. So the Coast Guard used to have a force called Deployable Specialized Forces, which did counter-narcotics, South America, and places like that. So that's what I did for many years. I started as a law enforcement type officer, working a lot with DEA and CBP and places like that.
So like in the movies type of thing, catching bad guys and all of that?
Sure, yes.
And that was until what year?
That was 2010.
And then how did you start it on the world of technology? When was that and in what position?
So after that too, I was assigned to headquarters where I did a lot of boat acquisitions for the Coast Guard. So I purchased the boat, I learned about the acquisition system, procurements, contracts, contracting officers, budget cycle, etc. So I kind of understood that piece. I was a program manager level 1 when I departed, which is a junior program manager at DHS. And from there, I went to be the enforcement chief of the Port of Boston. So enforce all the laws and regulation, within the Port of Boston, did some search and rescue cases, escorted liquefied natural gas carriers, etc. From there, the Coast Guard sent me to Georgetown University to get my grad degree. I got a graduate degree in technology management.
When was that? What year was that?
2016 to 2017. So in 2018, I went back to Coast Guard headquarters and I became a deputy program manager for Rescue 21 at the Major Acquisition Program Office, C5I Program Office. And I was there for 3 years or so. So turned Rescue 21 over to sustainment. And then I was the core for the telehealth program where we provided, electronic means for people to talk to doctors, which we didn't have at the time, and also any type of COVID type testing because that was right during the time of COVID.
What was Rescue 21? What is Rescue 21?
So Rescue 21 is a search and rescue system for the Coast Guard. It allows the Coast Guard to identify and locate people in distress, essentially. It's all across the nation, basically within the United States, Alaska, Western rivers, coastal.
So what will be somebody calling? Somebody that is where, doing what, or trying to do what?
Yeah, it could be a fisherman that's in distress, right? And because of Rescue 21, we can locate them and send rescue forces to rescue them.
So tell me about that system. And what was your role there? Acquisitions or PM for that?
I was a deputy PM. What we did is we transitioned it. We did it called AD4, Acquisition Decision Event 4. So we transitioned it to FOC for operating capability to sustainment. So now the system is over to sustainment shop and they're just keeping it running essentially, right? So we made sure it was fully operational before we sent it over there. I'm sure the Coast Guard is going to look at innovate that piece because it's been a while. That happened back in 2019. So it's been 5 years. So, we'll probably look at a new system in the near future, I would assume, right? Because that just system will take it, do some changes to it, but they'll need the new system eventually. Okay.
But tell me what you can remember about the system.
So when they key in the radio, try to say something to it, they only need to hit the button and it'll give you a line of bearing. Also, the boats have location beacons, things like that, which the system will tie into it. That Rescue 21 would tie into also SAR-OPS, it's called, Search and Rescue Operations System, which the watchstanders, like it's similar to a 911 operations center, they can build a search and rescue track in order to locate the vessel and hopefully the people on board. Basically, it's people who call when they're in distress or they need some help, and you have watchstanders, people ready to respond, and they'll lead that operation.
Okay, so that was your last thing,
Yeah,
right?
so that was my last job at the Coast Guard, but then I became the liaison officer at DHS as a Coast Guard member for my last 2 years. So I was at DHS OCIO, and there I was working directly for the IT operation department, where I helped with, all kinds of events there.
It's interesting how DHS is such a big place, but most procurements are coming from DHS agencies, not DHS OCIO. What are the things that DHS OCIO does?
Right, so you have LAN A, LAN B, LAN C, right? So those are different networks that they have, so they have to maintain those, right? They also, have a security operations center and an infrastructure operations center, and you have watchtenders ready to respond on those, onboarding systems into the network and looking for any events that they need to respond. Lots of monitoring, logs. There are some acquisitions also, right? There is contractors at that level that maintain some of the systems for us. They also have the Cybersecurity Service Provider Program, which is a CISA program, but the headquarters is the Center of Excellence for it, which they do a fantastic job at watching over the different systems that they onboard.
How many of the feds, they transition to industry at the end? Do you have any idea? I mean, most people, they're happy.
Most people are happy working on the inside and doing the mission from the inside within the government, right? I haven't seen many people transition from being a Fed to starting their own business or something like that.
You don't see a lot, or you do see a lot?
I have not seen that many. I've seen a lot more, go to work for another company, like a lot of active duty officers, military officers typically retired, become Feds themselves, or go ahead and move to a larger type company where there's a little bit more stability, because I'm sure starting your own company, there's not all that much stability at the beginning, right?
Okay, so we can divide our universe population in three. The Feds that keeps being Feds forever, that's awesome.
Right.
The Feds that go to work for usually a large or a small company, and then the Feds that they get out like you and they start their own company. I agree with you. I don't see a lot of those. I see most of the people that they go to, work for a large company or even a small company.
Yes. I mean, as you know, like the stability piece of a small business is not quite there for several years, if ever, really. And large companies tend to have more stability because they have many contracts, and if something happens to one contract, they can put you on another one, etc. Right?
Right.
And I think the value you provide coming in from the inside is tremendous, especially for the first few years, because you're aware of all the different, efforts, opportunities that are coming out. You know the people on the inside, you understand the process, you know the organization. And one thing that's been a surprise to me is how some of the contractors are so disconnected from what's going on the inside, right? I've been very surprised by that. And I think the key is to stay up to date on what's happening with the government, specifically the agencies that you're targeting.
Right. So what you're saying is that companies are disconnected. Well, look, it's difficult. These organizations are so large. And it's difficult to get a good feeling of it. It takes a lot of time. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I agree with you. What do you mean when you say that you're being surprised at how disconnected they are?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've been surprised about is how the acquisition process within the government works, right? The different phases, how the government purchases goods or, services, etc. Or if, like, for example, during an RFI, right, the government may say something, and industry, some companies may take that to heart and go down that direction and spend a lot of money into building a solution to that question, to that specific question. But a lot of time that question is just checking a box, right? So the key is to have connections on the inside to really understand what the requirement is and what do they need, right? Now, on the other side of that, I would say there is a fear on the government side to talk to industry on the outside because of the ethics rules and all that. And some of the best mentors and leaders that I've had said, no, you must talk to industry. Obviously, stay the legal side of things, but you must talk to industry about what is the need inside the Coast Guard so they understand what exactly the requirements are.
Yeah, but I agree with you that it's not that easy to find people that want to talk openly, right? I think they go through the motions, they put the RFI. I mean, the process works. If you ask me, it's very well designed. You put an RFI, you post the RFI, you're going to receive a few responses, I would think. I mean, you have a big industry trying to get business, so they're going to be interested in looking good and sounding smart. So I think it's not bad. So let's say the government posts an RFI. Let's say one of these agencies we're discussing, they post an RFI. And look, I agree with you. They put a little something and people go crazy. So what you're saying is they go overboard. Well, guess what? That's good for the government because people are desperate. So they try to give as much as they possibly can, even if it is a silly question. So it's probably good for the government, but a little bit costly for industry?
Yeah, I would say so. And I don't even know if that's good for the government because they don't have the time. A lot of these people are overworked, lacking resources and things like that. So they don't have the time to review so many responses, right? So in some ways, if they would make it more like prioritize a certain area in those RFI questions or even during the RFPs, right? If they really highlight what the requirements is, it will allow these companies that really only meet those requirements to bid for this and not get a bunch of fluff around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think what you're saying is that the government should put more refined requirements out there. Is that a little what you're saying? A little more refined?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I would say one of the issues I've seen inside the government is the disconnect between the program shops and the procurement shop, right? So, for example, the program shop comes out with their requirements, but the program shop comes out with requirements, but the procurement shop does not know how to really answer the questions from industry. It's supposed to go back to the program shop, but often it does not because lack of time, lack of resources, they don't get the proper answers. And what ends up happening is what is actually released on the street is not exactly what the program shops want.
But it doesn't sound that complicated. I have a hard time understanding how that can happen. Let's say I'm the program office. Let's say I want a data lake just to say something. How difficult can it be that the two parties meet, they talk. The contracting people are not technical people. The contracting people can be writing everything down. They come out with a document with, for example, questions and requirements of past performance. They write it down themselves. Then they give it back to the program office. The program office reviews it, does a quality check. And that's it. How is that more complicated? Am I simplifying the whole thing a little bit?
A little bit, because I think when it comes to like complex technical type work, right, that disconnect is a lot bigger than that. And you don't have time. A lot of times you have, as you know, some of the responses are restricted to 40 pages, 25 pages or whatnot, which a lot of times that is not possible to answer some of those questions with that. But that is a procurement restriction right there because they don't have the time or the resources to go through all that, right? Also not the understanding of it. So I would say it's a little bit more complicated than what you make it to be because you also got to look at the schedule and the timeline, right? So a lot of times they're pressed for time. It's the end of a contract. They got to release something on the street and some of the corners may get cut in that sense.
But Nick, they receive a lot of responses and maybe contracting doesn't understand them very well, but isn't program office that are supposed to review this?
Yes, they are. Again, because of the lack of time and resources, it makes it very difficult for them to review a lot of responses. That's why I'm saying to make it maybe getting less responses that are more valuable is probably the better way than a bunch of responses that are all fluff that, yes, we can do this. Because you know how it is. When you put an RFI out, most people, they come out and say, we can do this, and they don't really answer the questions either, right? Which, I mean, that's the way it should be, right? You're trying to get business.
What can industry do in this situation? Let's say I have a great company. I really want to add value. I really want to help. I know that the government doesn't have time to maybe put the most specific and well-thought RFI requirement out there. And I know that a lot of companies are going to respond bluff. What can I do about it? How can I demonstrate in a document that I know, if it's true that I know what I'm talking about?
Right, that is always a challenge because what you really want is that one-on-one connection with someone on the inside to be able to get a meeting and show your capabilities, right? That is truly important to be able to talk directly to the program office and make yourself known out there and help them, draft some of those opportunities out there. But that's not always possible, right? So the second best to that would be those industry days. So make sure to attend the industry days, ask specific questions. And if you cannot ask questions, I would tell the government we need a session where we can actually ask questions directly to the program office, not just to the procurement shop.
Now, a lot of people don't want to ask questions in front of everybody because that will be giving away certain information.
That's true. That's true.
That's why they always require one-on-one meetings. At least they try.
Which is a challenge, right?
My theory is ask the question anyways. Most people don't understand it anyways. That's my theory. I say go ahead and ask your question. Let me ask you something. I'm always curious. What is your approach to build a relationship with the contracting officers versus a program office? What do you think are the things that, let's say there is a requirement, the contracting office is in contact with the program office, and you want to build a relationship with that contracting office. Let's talk about the contracting office first. What is your approach to build a relationship if you already know them? Or maybe you know a little bit about it, but you're not best friends. You don't play golf with these people. So what would be your approach to develop a relationship with a contracting officer or contracting specialist or somebody in acquisitions?
Yeah, so I would say the best thing to do is to ask them a question that's in their realm of understanding, which is the procurement, without asking questions that are not ethical. So make sure that you understand the rules, right, far, and that your question is directed towards getting an understanding without breaking the law, essentially.
So, for example, setting what's a set aside about the contracting vehicle, about the timeline, about the incumbent, all these basic things. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Building that relationship is also to share knowledge. So I would share a piece of knowledge, some understanding of what this is that I want to ask before I just throw questions out there or ask for their time. And because a lot of times they don't have the time to give you, so you got to show an understanding of what it is they're looking for and the rules and regulations.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Nick. See you on a second part. Goodbye.